Good evening. I'm going to call this Maplewood Richmond Heights School Board monthly meeting to order on this 15th day of April 2021. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, do we have anyone for public forum?
We did have one person signed up for public forum. However, I do not see them in the meeting just yet.
Okay. It is 7:03, so we will move through the agenda. Okay, I need an approval of the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Katie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries, or approval carries. Okay, I need an approval of the minutes from the March 18th, 21 open session.
That's all in the consent agenda.
Oh, sorry. Thank
You can
you.
move down to study items. Your
Okay.
first meeting, you're all right.
So we're at construction update by Julie Villa.
All right, good evening, everyone. I have a super quick update this evening. We are out to bid. The drawings went out March 29th. I'll just jump right into it. Oops, here we go. So we've moved down on our graphic into now bidding and negotiations. So we are done with design and construction documentation. We will have a couple of addendums, just loose ends, questions from bidders, things like that, that will be incorporated into the construction documentation over the next 2 weeks or so. We had a virtual pre-bid meeting, which was mandatory for general contractors on April 7th. We submitted plans for permitting to Maplewood and Richmond Heights on April 8th and April 9th. Tomorrow and next Wednesday, the GCs and their subs will have the opportunity to visit the buildings and see the things that they need to see in order to be able to submit accurate bids. And then we have, since I posted this report earlier this week, changed the bid date from April 27th until May 5th. And that was primarily because we have heard that there are several other large school projects bidding on consecutive Tuesdays, April 27th, May 4th, and May 11th. So in order to avoid that and to make sure that our bidders are sharpening their pencils and completely focused on getting us the best numbers for our bids, we changed our bid date to Wednesday, May 5th. So we'll open bids at 2 p.m. that day. We will interview the contractors, the top 3 contractors the following afternoon, and then talk to you all on May 6th with the bid summaries and recommendations. The construction phasing and overall construction schedule hasn't changed at all, but I left it in here just to run through at a high level. So the ECC will begin construction after summer school is completed in July. The elementary will start mid-June as soon as faculty is cleared out of the building, and the building will be closed for the summer. And those projects will wrap up mid-fall or early winter, so by the end of the year this year. And then I've left these diagrams in here for the high school. I think we all know that this is going to be a long and complicated process. So the first piece, as I've mentioned before, is all of the utility relocation that needs to occur basically in your bus lot right now. So that's really the first thing that you guys will all see happening in June. besides the start of window replacement, HVAC, things like that, is that they'll be out there starting to relocate those utilities to the west side of the building. So you probably won't see a hole until later in the year. They won't start digging until all of those utilities are moved. They'll be on site, they will have their construction fencing up, things like that. But until those utilities get out of the way of the big addition, there's not going to be a whole lot of visible activity out there. If anybody wants to go into this phasing in any more detail, it's basically the same as I've gone through before. And that's about all I have for you this evening. Any questions?
Julie, I know this is probably way into the nitty gritty, but with a lot of the heightened awareness around transgender students recently, I was just wondering if you can remind me about, I know part of the work is to make sure we have inclusive restrooms. Have we talked about signage yet for those facilities, or is that something that happens later?
That happens later. The bid package only includes signage as required by the building code. So you all have an ongoing kind of purchasing process for interior building signage. So that will be later in the game, that any rooms that got new room numbers, any new rooms, things like that, interior room signage will come into play later. There's a number of ways that we can sign those restrooms. I've seen some pretty creative ones, some that are a little goofy, and you can just say restroom for everyone. So there's a lot of different options out there, and we can look in and talk about those in the future.
Great, that's helpful. And I'm sure our students probably have some thoughts on that too. So we've got plenty of time to get their input. Great.
Any other questions from anyone else? Thank you, Julie.
All right, I will see you all in early May then. Thank you.
All right, I believe next we are on the fiscal year 22 food bids by Irene Wan.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Oh, my hair's crazy. Sorry. Hi, good evening. Let me pull up my screen here. Oh. Chris, all I see are like the triangles with exclamation points. I'm not sure which. Here. Let's do this. Sorry, please bear with me.
I got you. I just had to download it real quick.
Okay, let me.
There you go.
Works for me. All right, so this is for the food and supplies bid for this upcoming school year. I sent the bid out the first week of March and received it on April 2nd. But I did want to kind of go through what my department has accomplished over the summer. So can I click? Oh. So over when all this happened, when everything shut down through August 2020, we served over 20,000 meals to our families. And I think that's a huge accomplishment considering we had to try and revamp everything. Same with teachers. So we were able to keep everybody. So thank you, board, for having everybody still employed, first of all. And the thanks that we got from the families when they drove up has been very motivating for my staff, for myself. It feels like we were doing something definitely important, even though, we may not be at the absolute front lines, but I think that my staff has done very well. When school started, all the way through January before we went to tier 2, we served over 27,000 meals. And so far for during tier 2, we've served over 28,000 meals. This has been a huge help having the students on campus. And I think tier 1, we should be able to surpass that even with the 7 weeks. That's my hope. But I think this is a very positive outlook, and I'm glad that we've been moving in this direction. So here's a couple, firsthand accounts from parents, and it's been, once again, it's kind of rejuvenates us to ensure that we're doing the best job that we can. And it really does affect families in our community. I can't tell you how proud I am of my staff and just how appreciative everybody is. I mean, PTO has been wonderful towards us. I can't say good enough, enough good things about the community. Like on School Lunch Hero Day, I don't have pictures, but they decorated each one of the buildings in chalk, and the kids made pictures and things, and it was just so adorable and really, really awesome that just being recognized like that, it was just huge for us. All right, so on to the budget part. I want to do a comparison between last year and this year. I kind of adjusted some numbers, but essentially it's pretty much the same. I'm anticipating that with all the kids back in August, we should be close to what we used to do before COVID. So I estimated the same amount of products and supplies, adjusted a little bit for the high school population increasing with the classes moving up. But other than that, you can see the numbers there. I've also included the USDA foods, which used to be labeled commodities. So this is the money the government gives us based off of lunch counts. So typically it's supposed to be 2 years before whatever year that we're going into, if that makes sense. So really the school year 21-22 entitlement should have been based off school year 19-20. But because of what happened, there's a waiver that allowed us to use the numbers for 18-19 to still allow us to have some money involved. That money will go towards specific food items where manufacturers have contracted with the government to create these the different products like pizza or like chicken drumsticks, things like that. There's also a produce part of it. So I'm utilizing that part to help supplement our food budget now. So to have the greatest flexibility and control over pricing, I put forth a request for proposal. This allows for different criteria to be, this allows for manufacturers to be judged on different criteria. Now, because we do receive federal reimbursements, price always has to be the heavily weighed factor. However, I can also add other things like you see there, the quality of the item. So if it's of same, a comparable quality, not necessarily brand, I can't say brand, but if this product is the same as another product, I can compare them equally. Now being in this position for about 7 years now, I do know the difference, so I can pick that out pretty well. And then quality service, how receptive is the manufacturer or vendor towards our district? Are they accommodating? Are there extra things I have to go through? The geographic preference is mostly for the locally grown items. Not a lot of vendors use this criteria just because I think, they're bigger, they're kind of based not necessarily within St. Louis area, but it's harder to try to find the smaller, medium-sized farms to help supplement them, to help get that produce to us. But that's a whole different conversation. The second part of this RFP is stating that we have a line item bid, so I can choose the pricing for each individual item versus some districts will do like an all or nothing type of bid where whoever wins the most items, they get the entire bid, but that doesn't allow us enough flexibility, in my opinion, for the size of our district and being fiscally responsible. So these were the vendors that I sent the bids out to. Gray's Foods, I will say, is a brand new one. I don't have a lot of experience with them, so I had to get some references. And so far, they've been pretty positive. But everybody else I have dealt with in the past. And based off the bids that were returned, this is the breakdown of how many items each distributor has been awarded. So Coal Wholesale has been a major partner with our districts, but they always seem to outbid everybody else on most things. So that's why they have 56%. Graves, like I said, is brand new, but their pricing was very, very nice. And then US Food St. Louis up near Page. And then What Chefs Wants is strictly produce. They used to be Sun Farm. And then Prairie Farms is our dairy. For non-food supplies, Coal Wholesale, once again, very good with pricing. Industrial Soap is who Buildings and Grounds also uses, but they've also been very accommodating for us. And once again, also have good pricing on items. But that's the breakdown for that. So if it's my last slide. So yeah, we're good. That's my presentation. Is there anything else that you have questions on or comments, concerns?
Thank you, Irene.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I just want to say, Irene, thank you so much for what you and the food service team has been doing for the district in this time and being so adaptable. It's definitely appreciated, and your thoughtfulness in this is also appreciated. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. But I mean, I will say when this all went down, all my staff were like, how can we help? And that has been a true blessing. I mean, I don't know if a lot of other districts can say that, but everybody was ready to jump in. Yeah.
Just a big thank you to you and your staff.
Absolutely.
We couldn't do it without you guys.
Well, thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. All right, the next study item is special education update by Ben Gleason.
Did we skip E-rate?
We need E-rate.
Oh, sorry, let me go back. Next agenda item is E-rate Category 2 contract by James Gardner.
All right. Oh, glad not to be forgotten. Let's see here. This is from our February meeting, just a recap, since I know we have two new members on the board whose familiarity with E-rate as a program may not be as deep as the other five of you. Generally speaking, it's pretty much as it's spelled out here. It's administratively run by the Universal Service Administrative Company under the direction of the FCC. The real intent of the program, dating back to its origins in the mid-90s, was to bring the last mile of internet service to schools and libraries that weren't necessarily being served by the telecommunications providers at the time. Since about 2010, that mission has shifted a little bit more toward, it still covers those things, and we are certainly a beneficiary of those, but it also provides for network switching and wireless access points and some other gear that's more consistent with what you would see in pretty much any modern business, as well as any school or library. It's broken up into two types of services. Category 1, which is the kind of ongoing contractual things like internet service, and Category 2, which tends to be the capital equipment. And I can reshare the current screen here. Okay. Just to summarize, basically, we were looking for bids on our main internet service that comes to the high school and then branches out via our wide area network. And we were also adding a spoke to that network to accommodate the new central office location over on Hanley. We received several bids. Spectrum is our current provider, and they for the internet service. There obviously is no provider for the service that doesn't exist yet, but they bid on both and were the most competitive bid. I do notice a minor correction in here. I refer to Spectrum and Charter both in the same paragraph, and they are effectively the same entity, just for a reference point. The amount per month is pretty consistent. The 3-year term is also eligible for upgrades should we need them, in line with the cost at the time, and we can manage that through E-rate on an ongoing basis. With respect to the switching and battery backup and the wireless component maintenance, Enterprise Network Technologies out of St. Peter's won the bid this year, and they have historically supplied about 75% of our Category 2 capital equipment needs. They're an excellent local company, been in business in one name or another for more than 20 years. And if you're interested in the true stuff that's down in the weeds, there's the contractual details on the SLA arrangements for Spectrum's internet service, and what constitutes a breach of their contract, and with the equipment list, of course, the itemization of pretty much everything we're asking for. The numbers are pretty much as they're laid out. This is obviously all incorporated in the budget year to year. Does anybody have any general or specific questions about either the contracts, who we're buying from, what we bought, or what we're going to buy?
We're voting on this tonight. Is that right?
To approve the contracts?
Yes.
That is correct.
No questions? Thank you, James.
Thank you for your time.
Sorry, I skipped you.
No, I'm sure Ben was probably like, hey, I'm up next.
I just wanted to spice it up.
Fair enough.
Next item, study item, is special education update by Ben Gleason.
Right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Gleason. I'm the special education coordinator for the district. And just here this evening to provide some updates on the special ed program in terms of the students we're serving and the type of programming that we've been providing the past year. First, I want to just start off with some basic statistics about the number of students we are serving. The bottom line on this slide, with quite a few numbers here, is that as the overall student population in MRH has increased, the number of students that we serve in special education has also increased. Currently, we are at 14.8% of the MRH population receives special education services. That percentage is in line with the state percentages, and it's just slightly under the county percentage at about 16%. Here you can see the actual numbers of students with IEPs the last 3 years. You can see the steady increase. From 18-19 to 19-20, you see a little bit larger jump. That year we had, in addition to students who became newly eligible, we had a slightly larger number of students transfer in who already had IEPs. So that explains that jump there. Here's the breakdown percentage-wise of students with IEPs across each of our districts, each of our schools, excuse me. You can see the high school has about 16.5%, middle school just under 13%, elementary at 15%, and ECC at about 13.5%, for again, an overall percentage in the district of 14.8% of students receiving special ed services. We do serve a larger percentage of males than females as compared to the overall MRH population. As I looked at 3-year trends, that has been coming closer to the MRH percentages, in that the percentage of males is decreasing and the number of females is increasing. but we will continue to watch that moving forward. In terms of students receiving free and reduced lunch versus full pay students, we are serving a pretty comparable percentage to the overall MRH population. In terms of ethnicity, you can see here the percentages for students of Asian background, Black, Hispanic, multiracial, Pacific Islanders, and then white. You can see that we are currently serving a slightly higher percentage of Black children than the overall MRH population. We again continue to watch that. Our school psychologists and our speech language pathologists do receive training regarding appropriate techniques and assessments to identify students so that we're not misidentifying or over-identifying students inappropriately. We also serve a portion of our students who are English language learners, and that is fairly comparable to the MRH population as a whole. We also have students who not only receive special ed services, but are also identified for our gifted program. You can see there about 5% of our students who receive special ed are also gifted. Mr. Lyons and Ms. Kruger work with us so that we're finding kids who are what is often termed twice exceptional. This slide here shows you the number of students by disability category. Disability categories in Missouri are set by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. You can see that center block there. Our largest category of students are those who have an other health impairment. That category relies on students having a medical diagnosis, and in the vast majority of instances, that medical diagnosis is ADHD. Our second largest category is students with autism, followed by students with speech impairment, then specific learning disability, and those would be learning disabilities in areas like reading, written expression, and math. And then our fifth largest category are students with emotional disturbances. So to serve all these students, of course, we need a number of staff. You will see here that the top block are the numbers of our special education teachers and the schools to which they are assigned over the last 3 years. I think the key takeaway here is that this year we were able to add 2 special ed teacher positions, one at the elementary school and one at the middle school. So as our overall population and number of students served has increased, we've been fortunate to add positions. We also employ speech language pathologists, school psychologists, occupational therapists, social workers, and that staffing has stayed the same the last few years. And then, of course, we also provide adult support, which is often by our paraprofessionals. And we have stayed fairly steady in terms of that staffing level. You can see during the 18-19 school year, we had 13 positions. The next year we had 16, although one of them was a temporary position for a specific student. So we have evened out at 15 TA positions. I should note something that's I think is very exciting. Next school year, through SSD's Focus on Instruction initiative, we will be adding a part-time instructional coach. So I think that will be a great benefit to MRH, to our staff, and ultimately to our students. The data here that you're looking at is state testing results. As you know, there was no state testing last year, so we are looking at data that's now a few years old. What you see in blue are the results on this slide for English language arts. The blue circles are our MRH students, and that represents the percentage of our students who scored proficient or advanced in English language arts. The blue circle compares to the blue triangle, which is the state data. So you can see that our MRH students do outperform the state average in English language arts. However, you can see the orange lines are MRH, non-IEP students. So there is a gap between the performance of our students with IEPs and students without. That is fairly consistent in terms of the size of the gap across the county and throughout the state. That does not make it okay, but I say that just to let you know that we are not an outlier in this regard. Here's our math results. Again, blue circle is MRH. Blue triangle is the state. So you can see in 2018 and 19, we were able to get our math results above the state average. Again, a gap exists between our students with IEPs and those without. So we continue to work to accelerate our students' learning so that we can shrink that gap. This slide is more current data, and you'll see at the top it says FAST, winter screening results. FAST is a benchmarking and progress monitoring tool that a special school district uses across the county. These results are from a screening measure that is very comparable to the STAR results. So when you've been presented the STAR results, these are very comparable in that these are nationally normed assessments that are adaptive to how students respond. So this data shows compared to the county median of students in primarily in grades 2 through 8, because that's what SSD is monitoring county-wide. You can see the top area is regarding reading, and our students at ECC are above the county median in terms of the national percentile that they scored. Our students at elementary are also above the county median. Our students at middle school are below. The bottom box section is math results. Again, you can see that ECC is above the county median as well as elementary. Middle school is below, just below, barely, the county median. And you might be wondering, you know, what might account for that? I think in part, our middle school, we have smaller numbers, so the performance is more impacted by small numbers of students. And we do have a small cohort at the middle school of students who in the past would have taken alternative assessments due to the complexity of their needs. And those students are now included in these results and our other standard assessments. As we know, the quality of our teaching staff, the quality of our support staff is the #1 factor for how our students perform. So a lot of what we do is provide professional learning opportunities for our staff. One thing you should certainly know is that all of our special ed teacher level staff participate in all the MRH professional learning opportunities. So on those PD days, our special ed staff are participating right along with their gen ed teacher colleagues. They're also members of our curriculum action teams. And we believe this is important so that special ed staff are part of the larger school community, and B, so they understand what the curriculum is, what types of instruction are going on, because a lot of what our role becomes is helping staff provide accommodations and modifications so our students with IEPs can access the MRH curriculum. The SSD specific professional development really is designed to increase their effectiveness by using specialized instruction in 3 main areas: English language arts, math, and social emotional learning. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, the idea is to then be able to accelerate students' learning with the goal of decreasing the gap between students with IEPs and those without. I did want to just touch on the kinds of supports that the special ed staff have provided during COVID. I think it's fair to say, and we can all acknowledge that this time has been a challenging time for all students and all families, but our students with additional learning challenges have been at risk for disproportionate impact. In the spring of 2020, we developed distance learning plans for each student. The special ed staff provided synchronous as well as asynchronous learning opportunities, whether it was through It's Learning or paper packets, because we did have some families that preferred that paper packet option. We provided regular office hours for students as well as parents. During the summer of 2020, we offered our extended school year program, and extended school year is a summer service, and students have to be found eligible for extended school year through the IEP process. So last summer, that was conducted virtually. And again, we provided services synchronously and asynchronously. During the first semester of this school year, we continued to provide services to students in the Tiers plan, as well as all those students who selected the virtual academy. We again started with distance learning plans, and then through state direction, and started to include those plans into IEPs as a formal portion of that written document. We had blended learning coaches. So special ed staff served as blended learning coaches that were supported and guided by Roxana, and in turn supported their special ed and other colleagues. We provided additional assistive technology resources. We continued with office hours for student and parent support. And here's where, to me, it gets good. Here's something I feel proud about on behalf of our staff. Once the board gave its approval for on-campus interventions to begin, our special ed staff really went to work. And you can see here that 42% of all students with IEPs participated in some on-campus in-person intervention throughout the first semester. And that was possible because all of our staff stepped up. Every role: teachers, SLPs, OT, physical therapist, social worker, TAs, our ABA associate, everyone contributed to that effort. And I think while it was, it did not take away all the challenges, I do think it was a very positive experience for many of our students. So, speaking on behalf of the special ed staff, I'm very grateful that the board decided that we could move forward with that. We also were able to host a clinic site at the high school, which allowed our school psychologists to move forward with special education evaluations, so we could identify students who were in need of special ed services. And then I just wanted to mention that SSD staff across the county who were in a virtual type environment completed regular surveys about the participation rate of students in distance learning. And 91.7% of ERate students did participate, which out of the 22 districts in the county, we had the highest rate of participation. And I think that's because of a number of factors. A, our students wanted to participate. B, our families supported the students. More than ever, many families, especially of our youngest learners, became our great partners in supporting kids engaging in their learning. We had principals doing home visits to help encourage students to participate. All sorts of things contributed to a high rate. Now, obviously, that's not 100%, and we would have wanted 100%. But nevertheless, it was a high rate. During the second semester, again, we've continued to provide services to students in the Tiers Plan and Virtual Academy. The blended learning coaches have still been a resource. The assistive technology has been there. We have continued with some extended day opportunities for a small number of students, K through 8. It's not as many as were possible during the first semester, of course, because we had our staff serving students in person in the AM cohort, PM cohort, and Virtual Academy. But we were able to extend some opportunities for some of our more needy students. We also offered office hours for student and parent support at the high school. And although this presentation is focused primarily on K through 12, I did want to point out that on January 25, when we moved tiers, the special education preschool program did reopen for in-person. And then, of course, we maintained virtual services for those families who selected that option. This summer, we are again offering extended school year services to students who are eligible. In addition to that, SSD has created, and we are planning for a program called Universal Summer Supports. Unlike extended school year, where a student has to be eligible, Universal Summer Supports is available to any student who has IEP services. These two programs will run June 21 through July 9, which is the same dates as MRH Summer School and Enrichment. Information has gone out to families about how to register for USS. For any families who may be watching the meeting, the original due date to register was April 2nd, but the registration link remains open. We're still welcoming students to register. And if families need any support with getting registered, I invite them to contact me or their child's case manager, and we'll make sure they get registered. And I do want to make one last plug. I'm going off slide here, but we do have a new parent group forming. The MRH Parent Advisory Council is forming, and that's being led by a few parents. And Mr. Rich has put out on all of our communication platforms, including on our Facebook page that went out today, a flyer about that. So I would encourage any families who are interested in connecting with other families whose children receive special ed services to RSVP to Mrs. Kim Gifford about that option. That meeting will be early evening on May 4. Are there any questions from the board?
Dr. Gleason, I have a couple questions. Could you tell the families to just a little bit about the USS program? Where is it located and maybe the hours? No?
Yes, certainly. So USS will be from 8 to 3. For our younger students, it will be at ECC. And for the secondary students, it will be on the middle school, high school campus. The purpose of USS is really about enrichment. It's not necessarily directly related to IEP goals or services. the focus will be on literacy, math, and social emotional learning. Of course, there'll be opportunities for movement, and hopefully it'll be a fun experience for students as well.
I have a couple other questions, but did anyone have any questions on that part of it? Okay, so my other question was, I believe you mentioned we've added an instructional coach. Is that correct?
We will be. Yeah, next year we will be adding a part-time instructional coach. We will be actually sharing that with our neighbors in Brentwood. And Roxana and I recently participated in the interview process, and we have found our candidate and feel good about that person who will be coming on to primarily support special ed staff, but also will be a resource to the wider MRH community. Roxana and I have talked, we plan to include that coach in meetings and trainings with the MRH coaches. So we're all on the same page in terms of how we're going to support staff to meet their needs.
Will that person be working at all with the kids?
Their role, Brandy, primarily is to work with staff to make sure that they're using best practices to help us get consistency among strategies for students, both in terms of any kind of accommodations that we're making, and then also to help in the various tiers of intervention. So our gen ed teachers get some support, but primarily they'll be working with our special education staff.
Thank you. And if no, oh, Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, Ben, I have expressed before my real concerns about the gap between the achievement of our special ed students and our gen ed students. I frankly really hate that we even put the state average on those slides, because I don't care how poorly the rest of the state is educating special ed students. I don't want us to be poorly educating our special ed students. And I am struck by the slide where we got into some detail on the different designations of disability that exist in the district. Can you talk to me? Are we integrating well the data warehouse capabilities that we have to get real granular on the achievement of specific disabilities across the district and the achievement of students in various grade levels? I mean, I can't imagine that maybe we are consistently seeing the same kind of gap, but are there different gaps, and how are we starting to target those?
So there's probably opportunity to do better at really digging down and disaggregating. We do have a data team process, which is essentially a problem-solving process that all our teacher level staff participate in, and whereby we come together on a regular basis, discuss students whose performance is of concern in terms of whether it's looking at progress monitoring data, because that FAST system I mentioned also serves as a progress monitoring tool. So we are able to assess students depending on the type of probe that we're using on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And so we're able to look at their progress over time, and when it's not sufficient, those students are talked about in that problem-solving meeting scenario for the purpose of trying to identify what may be, causes for the lack of improvement, and generating new intervention ideas that are consistent with research and best practices.
Are there supports that SSD broadly is going to be? I mean, I I know, again, it's not our job to get into the details, and, we have kind of the broad understanding of, universal summer supports and things like that. But, what resources are you getting, and what additional resources may we need to be directing to be addressing this right now?
Sure. So SSD does have a number of other positions that we regularly call on here in MRH. We have a title called Effective Practice Specialist, and those folks are content or disability experts, if you will. So for example, we have an autism effective practice specialist. We have a social emotional behavioral effective practice specialist. We have that role in the area of school psychology, in OT, PT, in speech language. So those are roles that we regularly ask to essentially come in and consult with us to problem solve, to try and change the trajectory of how a student is doing, primarily through changing what we are doing, because we know that the student's growth is dependent on what we're able to do. SSD also has facilitators. That role is changing to, as I mentioned earlier, the instructional coach role. And the instructional coach that we'll have next year will be focused on things like high leverage special education practices, universals, which has to do with routines, rules, classroom structures, as well as what we call classroom learning systems, which are those systems, those practices involve students looking at their own data, being involved in setting short-term goals, studying their data, generating ideas about what can I do to help myself as a learner? What can the teacher help me to do as a learner? And then in addition to that, we do have literacy coaches. Next year, SSD is expanding the number of math coaches that we have. So those will be additional resources for us as well. So is that kind of what you were getting at?
Yeah. And Roxana, the interventionists that we've, brought on over the past, few years, do they have any sort of mandate to work with special education students or not work with special education students or anything like that?
Well, so students with IEPs have a wide range across the learning spectrum. So many students with IEPs are in the gen ed classrooms and they don't need necessarily intervention support. We do have some students who get support with our interventionist in either a tier 2 or a tier 3 setting. And then we have some special education students that are more self-contained that are with the special education team. So we have a wide range, and those students are included across the spectrum of our services as well.
Okay.
Can I just add, there may be, for example, a student may have a speech impairment as their only special ed service. They may also be eligible for reading intervention from an MRH reading interventionist. So there isn't a line of, if you have an IEP, you can't access this or that. So there is some collaboration there.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Gleason.
Thank you.
All right, our next study item is Title Program Evaluation by Roxana Meacham and Margaret Scordius.
Dr. Scordius is not able to be with us tonight, so you will have to suffer through with me. I will give you a very quick update on our title programs. You are aware that the purpose of title programs, these are funds that are coming from the federal government. Really, Title I exists for the purpose of student achievement, and money is set aside for what they consider underserved populations, The purpose of the funds are to ensure equitable services. So it is additional money that allows us to provide extra programming in areas of need, which can include gifted students, English language learners, homeless students, and then of course, our funding is given to us based on our free and reduced lunch count. At MRH, we have tried to make sure that we provide school-wide options. There are school-wide programs and targeted programs. Targeted programs are programs where you can only serve and use funds to support a limited segment of the population. But if the school chooses to do school-wide, that allows us to use our money in early intervention for all students in the district. And so that's what we've chosen to do. We focus our title money in grades K through 6. Our philosophy is if we get to students early and we provide additional supports and determine cause early enough in the process that allows students to progress faster. We've served approximately 750 students this year, and we are using a balanced literacy and multisensory approach to reading. We use inquiry-based and balanced mathematic approaches as well. And when I say balanced, we try to make sure that we are really looking across skill sets in both reading and math and targeting the particular skill gaps or skill deficits by child so that we're sure that all kids are getting what they need. All students get high quality instruction from high quality staff, and we believe professional development is a critical component in our design. So we spend a good deal of our funding directly on teacher training, because we know that in both reading and math, teachers being able to see students, know them well, and notice where they are and what they need is the key to our intervention work. We also believe that parent involvement is essential to the process. And so we guide our program through a parent compact, and parents serve on our title program evaluation committees. We have served students in the past year through title funds in providing high quality professional development in both reading and math. We do have content coaches in reading and math that serve the ECC in the elementary. We also have reading intervention specialists and math intervention specialists in both buildings. We purchase every year some supplemental instruction resources, which also includes, which was very important this year, the virtual technology pieces that allow for practice. And everything that we use in terms of instructional materials in the program is required to be research-based. I think I said most of these things already. We also do have 2 consultants that have been working with us fairly consistently. We have a partnership with the math team out of Washington University. They Math 314 is what that group is called, and they have really helped us work on just breaking down our mathematics standards in elementary school based on some specific concerns that we saw in our elementary scores. They are helping elementary school, now that the scope and sequence work has been laid, improve the assessment practices for students, which help us know better what their individual needs are. And they've also moved on to help us now in middle school in this past year. And we'll be talking with you in May about a very exciting additional supplemental math program that we hope to provide to any student who needs it, specifically as a result to kind of the math work that we're seeing and the math loss that we see as a result of the pandemic. So that's to come. We also receive funding and then redistribute funding specifically for Girls Hope, Boys Hope, Girls Hope, which is a residential facility that resides in Richmond Heights. It is for students who either do not have parents or whose parents have signed over custodial rights. And so they cannot receive funds directly. Those funds are allocated for them, but MRH administers it, and that's also included in our Title I funding for the year. This year, the committee had met over the course of the winter and early spring, prioritizing what we believe is effective. The committee has identified priorities for the following school year to include the continuation of the instructional coaching, continuing to provide the online materials and also the research-based supplemental materials in literacy, math, science, and social studies that are currently in use, with the addition of this additional Tier 2 math support that we'll be discussing with you next month. Continuing our support for professional learning in literacy and mathematics. Specifically in the coming year, we will be implementing letters training, which is really phonics-based work. We know that root cause of a lot of reading difficulties for children are as a result of their phonemic awareness and understanding of phonics. And so that will be a critical component that we'll be adding. And then we really want to make sure that we are focusing on providing additional reading and math intervention options, specifically post-COVID, and looking at what that might look like if we were to provide things that students can do at home, additional after-school programming, and things that are happening outside of the regular school day. We also receive Title II funding, and Title II is a fund, also federal dollars, that are set aside to help schools improve the quality and effectiveness of our staff. So specifically looking at how we train better teachers, principals, and other school leaders. The focus is on improving academic achievement, but also in providing a healthy school climate. Our focus is in Title II for the next year. We'll also continue to be on professional development. We have funded a lot of our work in SEL and restorative practices with these funds. In the past 2 years, we've also focused a lot of the funds on improving our elementary science curriculum. We've done a lot of book study work. So our culturally responsive teaching book study has come out of Title II funds. And in Title II, we are required to be a pass-through for any non-public schools that reside in the district. And so we manage the funds for Little Flower as well in the area of Title II. And then we also get Title IV. So Title IV funds are funds that are set aside for what they call well-rounded education. So there are 3 categories that we can spend money in, and we are required to budget money in 2 of the 3 categories. One are for what could be considered enrichment programs and a well-rounded education. And when I say enrichment, that could also be our what we would call our specials classes. So arts, music, those kinds of things that we add to the curriculum that give students something beyond the 4 core areas. We can also spend it on school climate and any Safe Schools initiative. And we can use it to improve technology in any way that supports learning in our schools. We have used this money in the past year to fund many of our research-based science program supply materials, so our MySci materials. We have used it to do visible learning and virtual learning in social emotional areas, including our work with Panorama, which is our social emotional screeners for students. And then we also serve as a pass-through for Title IV funds that go to Little Flower. This is what the funding looks like. So we were seeing a decrease in funding year by year. We got a little extra money this year back, which was good. And you can see how much money we are managing for Boys Hope, Girls Hope. The bypass funds for Title I go directly to the Archdiocese, so we do not have to manage those funds, but those are funds that are not coming to MRH. And then you see what the MRH amount is in Title I. So you can see that that is significantly less than we were receiving even 4 years ago. Same for Title II. We've seen a steady decrease in Title II money. We did see a little bump at the end of this past year. And then here's Title IV. In addition to the title monies, it would be worth noting that we have also, under the auspices of the Every Child Succeeds Act, we have received 1 round of CARES money which helped us prepare for all of the COVID safety precautions that we've been able to put in place, and also help us do any additional virtual learning needs. We are in line for a second round of CARES money, which will be just a little over $500,000, which will help us pay for additional staffing needs that we've had to expend this year and looking into next year. And we also are anticipating around 3 of CARES money, which will be used specifically to make sure that schools can remain open and that we are addressing future educational needs that students might have post-pandemic. So all of that is things that we're looking forward to and are actively planning for. And you've heard us talk about many of those look ahead kinds of staffing needs in prior board meetings. Any questions about our title funding?
Thank you, Roxana. Okay, the next item on our actually, Chris, are you?
Yeah, I want to go ahead and tee this up, and this will give an opportunity to get Rachel and Amber up to speed on what I'm doing here.
Okay, so the next item is the copier lease restructure by Chris Holzler.
And I will not have you vote on this evening. Okay, thank you, everyone. Just to provide some brief context, I'm not going to spend more than a few minutes on this. We do lease, the district does lease our printer and copier fleet. We're currently working with Marco, and we worked with them back when they were D&T and continued that relationship when they were bought out by Marco. It's been a very positive relationship over the years, and they've done a good job of supporting us and our needs here for the district, our copying and printing needs for the district. So as we're getting closer and closer to the students returning and also into our construction project designs, it's become apparent that we're going to need to shuffle some equipment around. And we also are in about year 4 of our 5-year lease, and some of our higher volume machines are seeing well into the millions of impressions and are quite frankly just starting to break down more. That makes sense because especially as we've gone through COVID, we've put them through their paces. We actually had Marco out last week to move some of our lesser used copiers into the higher use volume areas to mitigate some of those breakdowns. So it's time to start looking at what it looks like to refresh. We still have a number of units that are in really good shape that don't have a ton of impressions on them and have quite a bit of life left. And but we do have some areas that I feel like we really need to replace those sooner rather than later. So what we're trying to do is to buy out our current lease and restructure, refinance that would allow us to buy a number of brand new high volume 750 page per minute units that would be put in our highest use areas, which tends to be our main offices and student service areas in our elementary school. And there's a certain copier in our preschool that just gets a ton of use and it's always breaking. So that's one that we're targeting. So that is the intent. However, my technology team and I, we've been working on this now for a while, but we're not yet convinced that we've fully vetted the new units. Right now we use Toshiba's and we've been mostly happy with those over the years. We're looking at changing brands. And due to that, we feel like we need to spend a little bit more time going through those units and making sure that the proper driver support is there. The last thing I want to do is put a new unit in these buildings, especially when teachers are coming back and them not work properly. It's going to be enough for them just coming back. So I'm not going to try and throw any sort of curveballs at them during this incredibly sensitive time. So we're going to spend a little bit more time. We're getting a demo unit in so that we can make sure that it's going to work with our systems. We've made less than optimal choices in the past, and those choices haven't ended well. So we're trying to do our best to make sure that these are fully vetted. So my hope is to perhaps bring you a completed restructured lease proposal, perhaps at the next work session, if not the regular board meeting. And that'll still give us enough time to get these units in and broken in before we hit the next school year.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions about any of that? Thank you for all your hard work. Okay, the next item on the study item agenda is Kelly Services Agreement by Roxana.
Thank you. I bring this to you every spring or the last several springs. We do use Kelly Services as our substitute provider. They have been good partners with us. This has been an incredibly difficult year for them and us, as schools have not been in session. They have been providing our substitutes throughout the entire closure. So they have been partners with us in providing virtual subs, hybrid subs, and in-person subs. I did have a long sit down with them about their ability to increase the number of subs. They're actively working on doing that. The only change to our agreement with them for next year is to increase our base rate for our clerical subs to match our minimum wage increases. So that's the only change that we're recommending, and we will ask you to approve the agreement officially at the next month's board meeting.
Thank you, Roxana. Any questions about any of that? Well, you're next on the administrative communications agenda. Want to give us your COVID update? Oh.
Sure. Let's do the COVID update for the week. Share my screen here. So when we're looking at cases of COVID in the state of Missouri, you will notice that they are up slightly from the prior 7 days in both the state and the county. The transmission rate is fluctuating. It is up currently by 0.03 points in the county. Watching that transmission rate, when we look at average number of daily new cases, you will see that, again, that slight uptick in the last 7-day period has caused these numbers to go slightly higher in each of the categories. Again, not huge shifts, but something that we do want to watch. We want the numbers to go in the right direction. So what I try to say every week is we're watching those issues. We know that directives are changing, but it is certainly not a time that we want to relax our protocols. We want to make sure that all of our mitigation strategies are firmly in place to make sure that those rates remain in the ranges that they're currently in. Here are the positivity rates for the last 7-day period. Again, that's something that we watch. Here in the central corridor, our testing rates are remaining very high and our positivity rates are remaining low. That is not true in all parts of the county, and that is something that, you know, we continue to watch on a, if not daily basis, certainly every 3 days. I get new reports and we're taking a look at that. The zip code data every week, when I come back to you with this report, I tell you that it went up in one zip code and it went down in the other. And that is in fact what happened this week. We saw it come down slightly and go up slightly in the 117 area. When we look at our student populations across the county, you will see slight increases in each of the age groups 5 through 19. So they are up a little bit from where they were at the same time last week. And those are the fluctuations we have been watching week to week for a while. So again, these are things that we want to keep our eyes on. We had one additional case in the last 14-day period from the last time that I responded to you. There's still one case showing because it's a 14-day total, not a 7-day total. When we look at positive cases within the district, at this moment in time, we have 0 active cases in the district, both for staff and for students. We do have 3 students that were still in quarantine as of Tuesday evening when I put this report together. And then here are the vaccine rates for the county. So those are steadily creeping up for both the state and the county. On the day that this report was run, which was the 14th, we're sitting just at between 31 and 32% of people who've received at least one vaccination, and we're looking for that number to go up. Would also be, I think, appropriate for me to say, now that anyone in the state of Missouri is eligible, that we do want to partner as best we can with the community and with families. So we are pushing out and will continue to push out information about vaccination sites and where folks can be vaccinated. Students that are 16 and older are eligible for vaccine, so we will continue to make information available to families as we hear of opportunities. I was on a call today with the state and the health officials, as I am on every Thursday, and I heard that this is what they're saying. Again, I can only repeat what's been told to me, but they're saying that they believe that students age 12 and above are likely to be eligible by June and the beginning of summer. They do not anticipate students under age 12 being eligible until sometime in early 2022. And that is the COVID report.
Roxanne,
Sorry, go ahead, Katie.
I was going to say, we have throughout the COVID times had a email address that folks can respond to. We did get an email from one of the NEA reps with some questions that have been bubbling up, and I think if we can proactively respond to those, that would be helpful. And I just, I think one of the big questions that I've heard from, that communication and others is just continuing to ask about our rationale for the changing in tiers. We have been extremely transparent and clear as can be when things are constantly changing with the science and the conditions, I think, in the community. The factors that we've used to determine tiers has been influenced by the CDC recommendations throughout. That hasn't changed, and I hope that teachers or staff that have questions about that, or families that have questions about that, can continue to go back and look at previous presentations where that has been consistent throughout. The other thing that I know has come up is questions about seeking input on this most recent change. And, I think this whole board has been firm believers in, we want to hear the voices of our stakeholders, but we also aren't going to ask folks about things if that isn't the determining factor. And so it will say, obviously community input and staff input and teacher input has been important. It has not been the only factor that we've made decisions on. And so for those folks who are wondering, we sought input in the fall as plans were being made, and have continued to use that input while everybody's understanding of the pandemic and the impact on their own lives has changed too. That those things are certainly influencing us generally, but weren't necessary to collect in a specific survey within the past 2 months. So I've probably said that ineloquently, but just wanting to respond again, and I think we've tried to get this information out especially to staff and teachers, but if those questions are continuing to bubble up, I'm not sure if if the folks who still have those questions just want to make sure that those questions have actually come to the board, because I do believe that we've been consistent on our understanding of that.
Thank you for that, Katie. Yes, we have addressed, I think, those questions in recent staff town halls, but I continue to encourage staff members to talk with their building level principals about any of the mitigation measures that they may have suggestions or concerns about how to do things better. We're in the process of reallocating furniture and purchasing additional plexi to make sure that we have the highest level of mitigation as we move from the 6 feet to the 3 feet distance that's now been governed by CDC, which allowed us to make that change. And just to remind new board members and you all that have sat through these presentations ad nauseum throughout COVID, I think are well aware that what we really look at are our ability to deliver those mitigation measures. We look at the community level data in terms of how that data looks against CDC guidance, which has changed since the pandemic started based on some very specific research in schools. And then the one thing that we look at very carefully, we look at daily, is our internal data in terms of what's actually happening with our students, families, and staff. And so those are the 3 areas that we use to make determinations among tiers. And the staff input and voice and the student input and voice is very important in terms of what we do within those tiers, but isn't the determining factor of when we move among the tiers, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and the one other thing that I think you've explained to me, Roxana, and is that the time for creativity around what our sort of less than full-time in-person learning was going to look like has actually passed. That there, I think, has been some desire to spend time iterating on the tier 2 design, which obviously we were able to do before we returned to tier 2. But I think that clarification around, we actually had to submit a plan to the state about what our tier 2 looked like. And at this point, it's either maintain the tier 2 as it is currently structured or return 5 full days a week if we're going to be in compliance with DESE. Is that a correct sort of interpretation?
I would say it this way, that state statute allows full in-person attendance or full virtual attendance. It does not allow for a hybrid. So in order to operate for a hybrid, the Department of Education allowed districts to write waivers. So we had to write a plan, which is why we solicited so much input earlier in the year. We had to write a plan to submit it to the state for them to approve us to even have a hybrid option. So you don't get to just continually choose new iterations of hybrid. You have to make a case for why in your context. For us, it was size of buildings, overcrowding in buildings. We could not get 6 feet of distance. And so we created a hybrid plan that would allow us to have half the students in the building at a time and continue to provide teachers with enough support that they could manage the virtual platforms. I am told, I was in a meeting today, and I hesitate to even raise this until I get more information, but I was in a meeting today with the commissioner and representatives from the state. And it sounds like that hybrid option that we have a waiver for will not be available to us next year, given the new CDC guidance and given current conditions. Now, obviously, we know through COVID, anything can change, but that was a very limited offer to allow districts to make some really difficult decisions and operate safely based on their community conditions. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that clarifies, I think, again, the conversations that I think you and I have had, and that I just, again, want to make transparent.
Roxanne, I had a quick question as it relates to some of the data. Do you know if any of these vaccine data points are going to get a little more granular as far as maybe county municipality levels of vaccination numbers, as opposed to just sort of St. Louis County and state and these sort of bigger, broader numbers? Have you heard anything?
I don't, and I haven't, but I will put that on my list of questions to ask when I'm next meet with the county health officials, which will probably be next Thursday.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
I think that's a great question. And Roxana, our second clinic for staff is tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yes, our second staff clinic is tomorrow. We have a large number of staff members who've already received their second vaccines, but we did have, Vince, Vince, did we have slightly over 100 people, I think, that will be vaccinated again tomorrow?
That's correct.
Yeah. So we anticipate in total, well over 80% of our staff, when all is said and done, will be fully vaccinated, within the next few days. We continue to push out, Ed actually sent out today more information on the vaccine, as well as, 8 to 10 other sites where folks can get vaccinated. We have really good partnerships, area partnerships. So the Heights has been super receptive. Maplewood Fire Department has reached out. So we have lots of partners who are helping us make sure that our staff has ample opportunity to be vaccinated. And we would like to also begin, as I said earlier, begin partnering so that we can help community members become vaccinated as well, because we know healthy schools promote healthy community, and healthy community promotes healthy schools. And so whatever we can do to help each other. I have 2 groups that have asked, so I should mention this too, if it would be feasible on a weekend when students are not in session, if they could use our large gymnasiums to do community vaccination sites. I think that is an excellent idea. We could have that turned around and cleaned up prior to school start on Monday. So anything that we can do to provide space or time or volunteers, we would love to be able to do to support the community vaccination effort.
And Roxana, any community member, because I actually have had a few community members reach out to me about wanting to, support something along those lines. Should those folks be directed to you, Vince, somebody in central office?
Point, I would say yes. They can either contact me directly, or if you contact Vince Estrada, he's working with the nursing team who've been taking the lead on a lot of those efforts. We would be more than willing to partner. I think that's a really important thing that we need to do in tandem with the community at this point in time. So yes, I would be happy to take those communications or calls. Any other questions?
Oh. Thank you, Roxana. I believe we're also on the next item, which is CBTF.
Yes.
Chris.
And while I was talking, I realized that the CBTF item should be an action item. And for whatever reason, even though we've gone over this agenda multiple times together, it is not there. So the reason that would be important is I need contracts to be out statutorily by May 15th. And so I do need you to make a determination at this meeting. We talked about that at the last meeting, and I'm sorry that it's not there. Our recommendation from the Compensation Benefits Task Force is to implement the step in the teacher salary schedule. And then we also propose an additional 1.25% increase for master's level and above, and it's slightly more than that. You'll see that on the draft salary schedule as presented in the bachelor's channel. That's because the bachelor's channel, as you recall, when we talked about salary schedule in the past, is separated from the master's and above, which allows us to maintain an equitable salary schedule and have it continue to work proportionally. But when we set that new schedule last year, you may or may not remember that it actually decreased the steps on the money on the bachelor's channel in steps 1 and 2. And so this helps us restore that and be a little more equitable. It also gives teachers an extra bump in an incredibly difficult year. We went over the financials at the last meeting so that you would understand that there's minimal impact to your bottom line over time. Chris, is there anything else you would want to say about that recommendation?
No, that pretty much nailed it. The only thing I would add is the reason why we're able to be so nimble with our salary schedule is due to the hard work of the CBTF and over the last couple of years to create a salary schedule that is balanced, meaning that the change from step to step is equivalent as people move through the salary schedule. That allows us to be able to make changes like we're presenting this evening, that impact everybody in an equitable way, which was one of the goals that the CBTF had identified as we began this project, I guess, what, Roxana, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, it was a heavy lift.
So, while we were doing that heavy lift to fix our salary schedules, to make it to where it was a tool that we could use year over year and be able to make adjustments simply and quickly, other schools were raising their salary schedules. So we did lose a little bit of ground on that bachelor's channel especially, and the changes recommended due to the functionality of our schedule allow us to increase that bachelor's channel to get us to a little bit more competitive spot within the region.
We did also look at benefits. The recommendation is to maintain our benefits with no changes for the coming year. There is an approximate 7.5% increase for health benefits, which will be offset a little bit by decrease in dental benefits. For those of you that don't know, we're part of the CSD Insurance Trust, so we do have a little bit of protection in terms of buying power for insurance there, but we are ranged based on our claims ratio. So we've had a couple years of relatively high claims based on our payments, which is why our rates increase. In years when our claims are lower, we see a decrease. So we had enjoyed 3 or 4 years of decreasing costs up until, was it last year, Chris, or the year before, where we started seeing them go back up. So we're readjusting upward. And so that is the recommendation related to health benefits. And then the third major thing that the CBTF worked on this year, there was some conversation around what would be compensation for our curriculum leaders. And I think folks thought that would be an easy thing to do. What we found out was that the ask coming from certain content areas and circles was very different than perhaps others. So we have some unpacking to do. So we've asked, CBTF has asked that we form a task force, much like we did the extra duty task force, to unpack that in the coming year. And then we'll have a recommendation for you in that area next year. Also, just so the board is aware, again, that group of teachers and administrators does a lot of heavy lifting. They were very instrumental in the recommendations that we have made to you around COVID leave, planning time for virtual instruction, substitute needs, our student intervention processes, and our teaching assistants that we added. They helped us with our first ever virtual snow day plans, benefits education. They were very helpful in implementing the town hall structure for better communication, and they have asked lots of questions around our just pay cycles and general finance. So we had a very productive season. We meet monthly, but to summarize, our recommendation is step increase with the 1.25 additional as represented in the draft salary schedule.
Any questions? Okay. So now we move on to the next item, which is, I believe, support staff recommendation, also by Roxana and Chris.
Yes, and this is another one that should be in your action item, so I apologize. I'm not really sure what happened there. The recommendation for support staff increases. Typically, we have done a 2.5 increase for support staff. Much as we have asked for administrators this year, we're asking for a 2.75% increase. That is the increase that's been included in the budget projections you've seen to date. And again, that extra 0.25 is just recognition for the incredible hard work that folks have done in this very, very difficult year. And then that would also include the recommendation, which you have already approved, of adjusting those minimum starting wages when we adjusted for the minimum wage increases and the quartile ranging that we discussed at a prior board meeting.
Roxana, it would be helpful to have 2 separate motions there.
It would, and my apologies. They should be there and written out for you, and I really just don't know what happened.
We'll amend the agenda as we get to the action items for that.
Yes. Okay, next item on the agenda, I believe, is employee recognition by Ed Rich.
Hello, everybody. So the 2021 Employee Recognition and Distinguished Service Awards event was conceived and is being executed with two overriding objectives: to provide our employees with a genuine sense of safety in terms of their personal health, and to provide an affair with a looser and less formal feel. Fewer white tablecloths, floral arrangements, and neckties, and more music, comfort food, camaraderie, and sandals if you want. So in order to maximize that safety aspect, we selected a venue which will be open to the general public, but will provide MRH with a designated, spacious outdoor area with distanced seating. This venue is called 9 Mile Garden. Most people know it as that food truck court. It's in Afton off of Gravois, just north of McKenzie. Continuing with the safety theme, we're holding this event on a Thursday night because a Friday night or some other weekend evening would place our employees into a potentially dense crowd of non-district patrons. We don't want that. I will point out that the day after employee recognition is a comp day for teachers. There will be a wide array of food trucks available to our employees who will be provided wristbands for food and soft drinks and water for certain specific trucks. And because the Board of Education has very generously agreed to fund this event for 2021, the only money that employees will need to bring along is whatever they wish to spend on adult beverages. I should mention that we are offering employees the opportunity to bring a guest for a nominal cost. Speaking of cost, we are able to pull off this event at about 2/3 of the cost of the previous events that we've held at that Probstein facility in Forest Park. We're going to have a prize wheel. We're not giving away ink pens. We're not giving away plastic cups. The prizes are astonishingly cool, and I'm going to leave it at that. I will be asking some board members to participate in a brief awards presentation. It will not resemble the ones you remember from prior years. No podium, no parade of speakers, but we do have some significant personnel changes all across the district which need to be acknowledged. And finally, this is important for you all, the nominating period closes tomorrow for the Distinguished Service Awards. Those are Citizen of the Year, Family of the Year, Advocate of the Year, that's the new one we added last year, and Spirit of MRH. Those last two categories are awarded to district employees only. I will present the nominations to you via email after tomorrow, but as you know, the selection process must take place in an open board session, which we need to get on an imminent agenda, please. And board members, I would just ask that you RSVP at your next opportunity. I will go ahead and resend the invitation for your convenience tomorrow. And I would love to answer any questions you have.
Ed, can I come?
Yes.
That's my question. Okay, thanks.
And that's my RSVP because I'm the one that always forgets to RSVP. So I'll be there. And thank you, because I'm really looking forward to this, as I know our staff is as well.
Yeah, word in the hallways is really positive. There's some people who are ecstatic about the format this year. So.
I'm looking forward to it too. I really missed it, not being able to have it last year. It's one of my favorite events of the year.
You said it.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, moving on to CSIP update, Roxana.
Sure. So this is just part of our review of the CSIP that was. We are 6 years into this CSIP document. This particular category was the category of mission and vision. As I was reviewing what to try to summarize for the recap, I actually really struggled with this because our understanding of many of these things have changed dramatically over the last 6 years. And some of the things that are put together, we've done quite a lot of work. We have quite a lot of work still to do. So I don't think we've arrived in any of these categories, nor is this meant to be a comprehensive list of the work. But it is, I think, important to review kind of what we intended to do and where we've been and maybe what we haven't been able to get to yet. So one of the items that was established as a goal was to ensure educational equity for all MRH students and families. We had some strategies that we intended to do. And we've accomplished many things, including a board equity policy and definition, a board proclamation. We did board training with the MAP Center. We have done lots of rounds of staff training, multiple equity retreats with the leadership teams. We have worked with NCCJ to provide multiple rounds of staff training at both the district and building level. We have worked really hard to make sure that social cultural identity has been firmly embedded in our guaranteed training sequences, as well as looking carefully at differentiated instruction and culturally responsive teaching and cultural proficiency. We've had experts in the area of equity come in and work with our staff. LaGarrett King was here doing a book study with staff last year, and we've started getting our feet wet with equity audit process, or at least making equity audits a component of our regular evaluation processes. Things that we have not yet been able to achieve that are still on the radar are really thinking about how to institutionalize that training so that all staff not only get it, but that we are able to maintain it as we get new staff and staff transition in and out of roles. We have not yet been able to unpack the data that was collected from the MAP Center community survey. We had talked about and hoped to engage the wider community in learning and dialogue. And so that was put on hold because of COVID as well. And we have a lot of training plans that have to be re-engaged, as most of the external and group professional development that could not be done via Zoom was also put on hold in the district in our areas. And I think that we have room to grow in terms of refining our equity audit processes as well. So a lot of learning still to do, but we have some legs under us at this point. The other area in the mission and vision was really a concern about making sure that we firmly embedded our metaphors and cornerstones in terms of really deepening our project work for children. And we, again, had some hits, and we have some things that's still remaining. So we were able to build and develop some really important community partnerships to help us deepen our project work. And I think that you have seen some really good things come out of that work. A newly revised capstone project at the high school. We did a number of We Schools projects. I could point at every building at every level of just deepening our museum metaphor work. We talked about increasing volunteerism, and the board took an important step by agreeing to pay for those background checks to allow parent volunteers to be in the building. We spent a lot of time and effort institutionalizing our museum process and documenting all of that in written work. We have been able to document and deepen our work at the ECC, particularly in the preschool, with our foundations of learning. I think the most recent innovation of Joy Boxes is a visible representation of work that has been deepened and strengthened. We have been able to provide instructional coaching supports in our metaphor work. So all third-year teachers, actually be fourth-year teachers now in the district, do a metaphor project within their classroom in hand with a coach, and they present that learning at a celebration of learning with me, so that we are learning with and from each other. We've also been able, what came out of this was an effort to expand our learning in social emotional learning. So we've done a lot of training in the last 6 years around social emotional learning, restorative practices, trauma-informed practices, conscious discipline, and a lot of work in terms of growth mindset. What we are now trying to do and to think about is how, again, we really solidify and institutionalize those practices to get a greater degree of uniformity, to get better data streams so that we are refining our practices and work with students. We had planned this year to do deep work with the Buck Institute around problem-based learning, and that was put on hold due to COVID. We had planned this year also to do a review, a deep review of our capstone trip for our sixth graders to see if we could improve upon that practice and provide a better bridging experience between our sixth and seventh grade. And that also was put on hold. We had grand plans. We still have grand plans for increasing and expanding our apprenticeship opportunities at the high school. I think our new apprenticeship teacher, Mr. Saucel, is doing amazing things already, but we did have a start and stop with some staffing changes in that position in the last few years. And we started a process as part of our normal curriculum audits in which one of the scoring guide criteria now includes metaphors and cornerstones within the curricula. And again, that audit process, while I do have a consultant working with me, has not been as deep and as detailed as we would like it to be, just for lack of time. So that's kind of where we are with what we've been able to do and what is still remaining. Again, this is not a comprehensive list. We can think of lots of other things that are also in play. We also were concerned at that time about making sure that we did better education for the community and the students so that all of the families understood the goals of the metaphors and cornerstones. And the goal was really to make that much more visible through our communication streams, both at the building and at the district level. We've really tried to put some time and attention into that in the last several years. We instituted the district-wide open house process so that community members and families could tour our facilities and understand better. We also have worked really hard to craft, market, and include more people in the signature events at each of the buildings. And I think that hopefully you agree that over the last 6 years, our museum nights, our celebrations of learning have improved and will continue to improve. Obviously, post-pandemic, we have to continue and revise. We have tried to make sure that those metaphors were visible even in the pandemic, but many of the things that we celebrate and love that strengthen our community around these very important mission and vision concepts for the district have been put on hold this year. And I know we're all anxious to have them resume. And I think, looking at the transition events, I've already spoken about that. So what comments or questions do you have about this mission and vision area of our CSIP document?
I'm just curious, for those of us who are new to the table, what the projected timeline is for concluding this plan and initiating a new one. I know that's been discussed at prior board meetings, but it would help me to be refreshed on that.
Well, so typically a CSIP process lasts at the end of 5 years. So this should have been the year that we would have done a deep dive. Obviously, we have a pandemic, and more importantly, well, equally importantly, we have a new superintendent that's going to be joining us. And so it would make sense, I think, that you would want the new leader to have an integral part in shaping that work as we move forward. So I believe if one of the board members, I can continue, but I believe the plan is that work will start shortly after Dr. Jameson's arrival. And safety conditions allow us to gather.
Roxana, will we be looking at data as well to see how that plan has worked thus far? I know that we kind of come up with a new plan or potentially incorporate some of the old plan, right? But just some deep diving into how the previous plan has worked.
Yeah, so one of the sections, hopefully I'm going to bring it to you next month, is the student achievement portion. And then I also have an HR portion. So we can talk about some very specific data. We have a little bit of a hiccup too, because much of the statewide data that we were depending on has been really choppy in recent years. And so when you'd normally want to have a through line of 5 years of consistent data, you've heard me year after year say, well, they changed this and they changed this, and last year they didn't test at all. So I'm planning on bringing you data to give you the best information that I can, but just know that it will not be as cohesive as you have been used to seeing in prior iterations.
Yeah, I mean, and Roxana, we know that the MAP tests are only one of the many pieces of data that we have on students. And, you know, I mean, if it doesn't, we obviously have to pay some attention to MAP, but, you know, if it doesn't make sense for us to base goals off of MAP, then, you know, I think there are obviously tools that we have that are much more utility to our teachers and, you know, administrators for making decisions. I also think we need to be really intentional about integrating the additional data points that we have now through Panorama, and, you know, even through the MAP Center survey that was done, you know, last year, you know, obviously consistently throughout the last year, we've heard the elevation of the importance of our social emotional supports, and, you know, I think are going to need to plan for a different reality into the next 5 years around those things as well. So having some baseline data as part of the CSIP process, I'm excited about and want to be explicit about asking for that and seeing it and reflecting on it regularly.
Thank you for that. That will be really important.
Okay, I'm super excited about the next one. Not that we don't love Roxana's presentation, but the Senior Events 2021 by Dr. Smith and Dr. Brower.
Hi, everyone. I am very also excited to be here tonight to talk through 7 really exciting events that we have in store. So, 1 second. All right. So I left spring break last year with, I think, 12 events on the table, and obviously all of those went poof. So here we are with a 7 event lineup that I'm excited about here. So we were able to reach some partners at the Department of Health, and these were kind of their high level summary. You know, just anything over 500 people needed an approved plan. I'll speak more about that a little bit later. All events, indoor or outdoor, need to be done at 50% capacity. Masks are required based on, you know, our expectation and their recommendations as well. Even though many regions we've been hearing have been kind of pulling back on that, we're staying true to be masks required in all of our spaces. Social distancing at all times needs to be taken into account. Congregating before and after events, and that has what has held up quite a few other school district events and other spaces, and so they are really concerned about that. Hand sanitizer and if bathrooms are being used during an event, make sure that we're monitoring the numbers of folks going in and out. I've linked their specific planning guidelines here for you as well, which were used throughout the planning for all of these events. All right, so here are 7 events that I'm going to go in depth with you for tonight. We starting on May 5th with Decision Day, and where our seniors are going to celebrate wherever they're going. Their decision to go to college, to start a job, to one of our, I think, seniors is going to be traveling the country for a bit before settling into school. So that's really exciting on the 5th, and that will take us all the way through June 10th at graduation. And I will go through each of those here. So our very first event is Decision Day. We are celebrating our seniors who, like I said, have made those decisions at the zoo. The zoo is running at a 1/3 capacity right now. And so we're meeting the expectation even of the county at 50% capacity or less. You'll notice in all of these slides, I've given you kind of the same bullet points here. So our anticipated crowd, which would be the max capacity there, would be 94. And that's if every single senior decides to come back and go. We have several who had early graduation and who are really kind of, you know, done until graduation ceremony. So we definitely are expecting closer to 50 students here for this event. And our college advisor is currently collecting RSVPs. This will be about a 4-hour event. It will include that time at the zoo, as well as some photos with students holding up their decision, either pennants or posters about where they're going. So this will be a great opportunity to partner with Ed to get some really good publicity about our kiddos. We'll be using buses for shuttling. It's 2.9 miles away, less than 9-minute drive. And I'm working with Cindy Northern on scheduling that as well. We are monitoring attendance for all of these events. So that attendance piece you'll see is how we're contact tracing. So Miss Biller at the high school will be collecting all this information from all of the different sponsors. So we'll have a hub of all people who attend everything coming and going and their contact information. Our main PPE and mitigation here, it's an outdoor event, masks, hand sanitizer on the bus. Students will be sitting in the same seats coming and going, which is going to be our expectation for any bus use for anything. We will also have permission slips, and we've edited our permission slips this year to include the language that we used first semester for on-site interventions. So there's a checklist that parents will have to sign off on to approve attendance for anything like this. And you'll see that's the path we'll take. It's very quick in this bus and out. The buses will not be parking there. They'll return so they can run our afternoon routes. This actually also happens to be an early release day. It's going to be a very busy day. It's our last one of the year. We'll have some students doing grab and go lunches on their way to the bus so they can eat outside. So along with the rest of the group that will be exiting. All right, this one is a very unique event. This is our progressive spring play. Miss Baker and Miss Potoff are putting together what sounds like magic to me. We are going to have a max crowd of 249 that will be there over an 8-hour period, or really a 9-hour period, 4.5-hour slots. Up to 8 people at a time will go through in 15-minute increments around the school. And students will be at these stations putting on parts of the production. We will have a student usher leading those 8-member groups around the school. We'll only have a bathroom opportunity at the concession to maintain outside use. And Miss Baker, Miss Potoff will be maintaining a list of all attendees for contact tracing that again will be stored with the main office. The outdoor event, masks, hand sanitizer, at each of the rotation spaces, which you'll see on the next slide, we'll have chairs sat 6 feet apart. If they do need to sit, some people will probably stand at the spots, depending on how long the students are presenting. But we're really excited about this. I will say that everybody has to RSVP. No staff can just casually show up. Unfortunately, board members, we ask you also to RSVP if you want to catch the rotation so that we can really stay true to our plan, our social distancing, and our safety measures. And here is their diagram. So they will start in the courtyard of the high school and move to the tree, and you'll just kind of see the path around the building there. I'm very excited about that one. All right, next I have our alt prom, which I tell everyone they can't even say the P word. We're calling this our senior fancy event because of the restrictions and because of just how unusual it will be. It will be an outdoor event in our courtyard space. Again, and max, if every single senior shows up, would be 188. But based on history, about half this class will come. So we're expecting closer to 100 students. Mr. Castle is promoting this up a storm. He sends out daily reminders. Our theme is the 80s. So if you are ever in the high school at all, you'll see these very colorful flyers all over the place, kind of drumming up excitement with very interesting outfits and things. So we'll see how this looks. Mr. Castle is collecting all those RSVPs, and any students that are bringing guests have to be vetted by Officer Jones in the police department. I'm not actually sure today the number of RSVPs to date, but I will check in with Mr. Castle tomorrow about that. It will be outdoors, like I said. Masks are mandatory. We'll have hand sanitizer at all the stations that you'll see on the next page. Socially distanced chairs 3 to 6 feet. The dance floor space, well, we'll have to get creative with that because of our ladies in their shoes. So if you'll know, we have a lot of cobblestones in that area. So whatever the most flattest space will be the dance floor area, and we're going to limit that to 20 students at a time in shifts. Our staff will be monitoring that. We will have our first floor bathrooms open for that event, and staff will be in that floor hallway to monitor to make sure that no more than 2 students enter at a time. Yeah, there we go. And here is our diagram. So this is just kind of our mock-up of how we anticipate it working. Dance area will have awards and photos. I think we're going to be using the lobby space for the photo because only 2 kids will go in at a time with Otto in front of the backdrop. We're going to have grab and go cake pops on the way out. So there will not be any kind of eating around the space with each other with masks down. And yeah, we'll see how this works. This is all new stuff. All new, trying something fresh out here. All right, scholarship night. Last year we had to do this on whatever the alt Zoom we were using was, and it was less than ideal. So we're hoping to kind of freshen it up a bit here. All students that receive a scholarship, which would be a max of 15 students. We're giving away 15 scholarships this year. And then we'd have a few staff members would be in the R&D. We're planning to Zoom in the people who are giving the scholarships for any remarks that they would like to say, as well as the parents. So I'm going to be working with Chris Holzer to make sure we can stream this and record it for posterity. But it will run very similar to how we did our NHS ceremony, which was kind of our foray into very small group awards, which went very well. And so I kind of am taking my nod from Dr. Walker and Dr. Nims as they modeled that so wonderfully for us. I will be collecting those names and making sure that we are for contact tracing purposes to Ms. Biller. It is a very small indoor event with a max of 20 people in the R&D. It's very similar to what we have there every single day during the school day. Our chairs will be socially distanced closer to 6 feet because of how few students we have involved there. Hand sanitizer, 1 bathroom open that will be, that's a single use bathroom. So we wouldn't have to worry about crowding in that space. All right, the next one is our senior walk. The planning was well underway when we left last year. And so I've actually never seen it in person. I've seen a lot of photos of our cheerleaders leading crowds of students through the hallways. We're going to modify that a bit to bring back this very exciting tradition. So we'll be on all 3 of our campuses in some capacity. The max crowd would be 94. And again, that's if every single senior shows up to participate. I'll be collecting kind of those RSVPs and verifications over the next couple weeks. Plus we'll have a few staff members to help us just kind of move around the community. The plan is that if it's not raining, the plan is our seniors would walk over to the ECC. And then after speaking with both Cindy and Angela, we will parade through a dedicated outdoor space at the ECC, get on a bus, go over to the elementary, something around, they're going to pick a path for us to walk where students are cheering on all the seniors. So that as soon as we have a path, we'll map out the specifics there. The plan is that we would return back again to the middle and high school and then parade through that space as well. And hopefully it's just a really awesome celebration. It's the seniors that I spoke to on my committee were just really excited about the idea of being able to do it because they had been thinking that we wouldn't get to do much just like last year. So our senior barbecue, which is more like a senior luncheon because the food will be a little different than a formal grill out. So we'll be at Deer Creek Park. This again is what I understand, a long-standing MRA tradition. It'll be an outdoor event, again, max of 94 if all seniors come. Right now I have 22 RSVPs. I'm expecting closer to 40, honestly, based on just my, crowd vetting through the senior class. We anticipate this would last up to 3 hours. 98% of students have said that they will be dropped off because by this time they're out of school. Their last day of school is actually the 4th, the Friday before. So a lot of the seniors are just going to meet us at the park to kind of have a lovely spread out on picnic blankets and chairs. last little hurrah before graduation rehearsal on that Wednesday. I will maintain a list of all attendees. It'll be kind of grab and go food stations spread out around that park space that we have, I believe, used apparently many years in the past. And so like Coach Robertson will be joining me and Miss Velasco to just kind of give the kids that last opportunity. We'll also be handing out our alumni shirts at that event as well. And that's the park for the probably 2 students that I need to shuttle over. This is how we'll go. It's 1.3 miles, 5 minutes in the bus. And our finale to cap everything off here is our graduation. And breaking news, as of 8:15 p.m., we have been approved by the Department of Health. So just while I was watching, I got the alert. Terry Hibbets did approve my plan that I submitted to her today at 1:30. She just wanted to make sure that we will be spread out our circles. And how we're going to do this is on the field, a max of 480. But since we were approaching that 500 mark, and that was our estimate, we did submit this to be safe. Every student will only be able to bring 4 guests, and they will be we're going to be painting or marking circles on the field that are 6 feet apart for our families to go sit in those spaces. We will have staff in the bleachers. We will have our students 6 feet apart on the track and board members surrounding that space. We want to have as much open space between the students and the parents and families on the field. So we want to really minimize any visual barriers to the students. We anticipate this being an hour. I think that's historically how they have gone. So I'm just taking my lead from Dr. Grauer and the team. Again, this is an outdoor event. We'll have hand sanitizer at all the entrances, really sticking to the 6 feet apart plan. That was what, Terry said we really need to be doing. And yeah, that's how we're going to cap all of this off. So we're really excited about that. And here is our kind of initial mock-up about how we'll set everything up. You'll kind of see Dr. Grauer made this up, and so we're going to do some version of this.
And that's just for clarification, that is June 10th, is that right?
Yes, that's Thursday, June 10th.
Your slide said May, so we just clarified.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, sorry about that. It would be June 10th. And that's barring no rain. I've been told what we do is if it's fine, we'll do it that day. And if we don't, we wait till the very next non-rainy day is what I was told how we operate. So yeah, there we go. And I believe, oh yeah, just a summary. All of our events fall within the 500. I mean, the one that was close, I just got the approval, so we're in good shape there. Primarily outdoor events. We are really focusing on our PPE and mitigation for safety measures. And it's just really all about celebrating our seniors and our community. And because last year we were able to do just, our car parade and a very quick drive-through graduation that I'm so glad we were able to do and pull off. This will definitely have a different feel. So, all right. What questions do you have?
So my first question is, how do I become an MRH senior? Can we make that happen?
Sure. I'll increase the numbers on every slide to account for you.
Quick question. What is the plan for congregating before and after
graduation?
Yes, to try to.
I'm glad you asked. That we will be opening our gates. We're going to have 2 gates. That's the 2 entrances on the west and east side of the field for families to come. We're going to do a full hour before graduation, which is longer than usual to give people time to kind of come in. Our hope is to have 3 SRO support, or Officer Jones and 2 other officers to help support traffic flow. And we'll have staff scattered throughout as well to be moving traffic along. When we exit, we're going to have our students first exiting to the side, to the lot, do kind of a dismissal out, and then we will have staff exit into the building to kind of clear them out of the way, and then we will dismiss half of the field at a time through the gates, again with our officer support and staff support to just kind of keep the flow of traffic. Like that is if everything goes well. I don't know if Dr. Grauer wants to chime in on that, but that is our vision.
No, you nailed it, Sam. You're doing a great job.
we, our families are great at these events. So, we plan to kind of scaffold the exits and the arrival. And it's all about educating people what we expect. And, we'll get in front of that and make sure that they know, this is going to make it a better ceremony for the kids, because that's what it's about. And we want to do something nice for them. And we did the best we could last year. And I think we made the most of a challenging situation. And this year we have a little bit bigger window of opportunity. So we're jumping on that and trying to be extra prepared for it.
Thank you all for this entire plan. It does look like a lot of fun, and I'm glad our seniors will be able to experience it. I just have one question, and I'm going to share my age with this question. So the last time I was at a fancy was in the late 90s, and I could just bring a guest. And I noticed that, Sam, you said that guests were going to be vetted by our police, and I just was curious as to why.
That's been the procedure that we followed up, I think, our whole time. Again, Kevin can explain that to me. We've always had the guest form filled out, and then we give the stack apparently to our SRO to make sure there's nothing that would be problematic. Am I explaining that correctly?
Yeah, I can jump in. We've had, like, in my 12 years here, maybe one person, and it was an age thing. Sometimes you get a guest form and the person's 24. And you're looking at this and say, okay, and then we have a conversation and we realize we don't have a form. Other principal signs off on it. And, we ask them some questions about the person, and 99.9% of the time, there's never been an issue. But we do want to make sure that we are checking who's coming to our event. And we've been very successful with it. We do use last year was Officer Hall. It'd be Officer Jones, who's been with us before, and she's done this before. It's more of an age check to make sure there are no other issues from their recommendations. Or a lot of times we'll get a form that's not signed by a principal. And so we'll have to call that school and say, hey, just making sure this person's in good standing at your school before we move anything forward.
I will say I edited the form again this year to include mask language, and pretty much all of our forms had to be edited just to accommodate new expectations.
Kevin, that's a common practice among all the St. Louis area high schools, correct?
Yes, I spend a lot of this time of year signing forms for our kids going to other events. It's pretty common.
I guess I should have added I'm from the country as well, not metropolitan area. So I'm like, what is this? Okay.
Well, I just want to say I will volunteer to help you chaperone, only because I went to my senior fancy event in the 80s and my favorite all-time outfit was from that prom. So I can help you guys out this year.
Don't let her come. Don't let her come. She's going to request Billy Idol music all night long.
My comment is the 80s theme is like, wow, I went to prom in the 80s. So thanks a lot, kids. Appreciate that. Also,
that is your son in Milan.
I know.
There we go.
I want to thank Sam and Kevin for your leadership on this. I'm a senior parent. This has been weighing on our hearts, and I know especially on our kids' hearts, especially after what we did last year, which you're right, Kevin, we made the best of it, but it just wasn't ideal. And so I thank you for all the hard work and thoughtfulness you put into this. And I know that our families are very appreciative of it. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Did anyone else have any questions? All right, Chris, you're up for the finance section of tonight.
Well, I said something witty, but I was muted, so I won't try and repeat it. I'll just jump right in and get this done. Pardon my absence on the video for a second. I was eating an orange real quick. Okay, so the March financials. Revenues are looking good. Everything is pretty much status quo as has been reported in prior months, so I won't spend too much time on this. We are still projecting our state revenues to come in as predicted. The financial outlook on the revenue side is positive, and all things are looking relatively close to how they have in prior years. That's about all there is on the revenue. I'm seeing our payments come in as we close to where we budgeted. As a matter of fact, we booked our taxes, our monthly taxes in today. So those will be represented on the next financial statements. On expenditures, salaries and benefits are tracking right along where they have in prior years. Position control has been a fantastic tool for us. Expenses are down on the salary side. We have made some adjustments, but one of the things that has been an outcome of COVID that is likely going to shift in the near future is overtime. Overtime has been greatly diminished. However, as we ramp up our planning and execution of those plans for students to return, well, it's a zero fail mission. So we'll do whatever we need to do to make sure that we're ready for those students to return in the next 11 days, I believe the count is down to. Purchase services are greatly down from where they've been in prior years, mostly because professional development is a large and important part of our budget. And while PD has happened, it has not happened to the extent that it has in the past simply because of travel restrictions. So we're hoping that we will be able to bring those up. Another huge expense to the purchase services side of the budget is substitute teachers. So while we are providing permanent in air quotes subs to our buildings to provide roaming support and ad hoc support to our buildings, the substitute expenses are greatly down from what we would expect to see in a normal year. Supplies are about where they were, about where 58.7% of the budget. Technology supplies, as one would expect in a year like this, are larger due to the COVID expenditures and virtual learning. However, supplies as a whole are running behind prior years, mostly because instructional supply expenses were decreased due to no students being on campus. Capital outlay, almost 74% of the budget, and are lower than fiscal years in the past. And that's mostly due to most of our capitalized technology purchases happening in the current year, reduced capitalized technology purchases in the current year. In prior years, we were either doing large forklifts to computers in labs or other infrastructure pieces that were not present in this year's budget. So with that, I always like to talk about the percentage of funding. So on our revenue side, 84% of our revenue is from local sources, which includes our taxpayers. So always be sure to thank them and identify them as the main contributor and the reason we're able to do the amazing things that we do for kids. And on the expenses side, let's see, let me get to that page. Salary and benefits are 74 to 75% of our budget. And that's a worthy place to focus that portion of our budget in investing in our people. So with that, we get to the fund balance page. We are currently budgeting a 38.5% reserve fund balance. Of course, that is a fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. So that will scale with the expenditures. I will likely be bringing you a budget amendment in the next month to, as we have a closer look at where some of our revenues are either lagging or have been higher than expected, just to true some of those things up. Also on the expenses side, I expect that we'll probably do better than the percentage on this budget, but I won't believe it until I see it. So I'll make sure that as soon as I have better information on where we'll end this year, that I'll bring it to you as soon as possible. And with that, I'll ask for any questions. Okay, hearing none. Madam President, may I move on?
Yes, please.
All right, so COVID expenses, that's the one, right? Yes, COVID expenses.
Yes.
So the board did ask that I track COVID expenses separately, and this is a representation of that tracking. This is a cumulative or rolling count. So we are just a little bit, I don't have the prior month on here like I intended to, but we are, we've added about $35,000 in expenses over the prior month. And as you can see the breakdown, I won't read these numbers to you, but the net cost of the district, including CARES funding and other grants that we've received, is just under $400,000 at this point. And with overall expenses being somewhere around $580,000. So, $628,000, looking at the wrong column. So definitely a significant impact to our budget. And luckily, about roughly half, by the time it's all said and done, will be offset by grant funding in one form or another.
Chris, really quick question. Do you expect that to continue on into the next fiscal year?
The expenses?
Yes.
To a certain extent, yes. But I also expect the federal funding to extend on into the next fiscal year too, which I'll discuss here in the next presentation. And also there was another presentation, I believe, that we missed it yesterday, but we're watching the recording of it tomorrow on some additional funding opportunities that may be coming soon, other than those that we've already talked about. So we will we'll make sure that we capture as much of that as we possibly can. And bottom line is we, like Irene, you heard her, she's already built in some of those things into her supplies budgets. And I know we've done the same in buildings and grounds. I certainly don't expect this significant of an expense, but they will still be there as we learn what the new normal looks like.
Thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
Does anyone else have any questions about that part? Okay, want to move on to budget development update?
Can't wait. This is my favorite part, is the budget. This year's been a little bit difficult as we've been planning, just because there's so many unknown factors, but we're doing, we were able to get the updated numbers from the county. So we're still doing some calculations and trying to nail down a more accurate revenue projection. But right now, I guess let me go ahead and pop this one up here. Give me just a second. Here we go. So we haven't made any changes to the reassessment numbers that we're seeing. Assessed valuation did grow. Given the numbers that you see, it's important to note that Hancock 2 limits our revenue growth to 5% AV growth or CPI. CPI has been calculated at 1.4%, which is lower than we would expect to see. I believe that the pause in our economy through this whole pandemic is the direct cause of that. And I don't expect that to continue in the coming years, but it is something that we're dealing with for the immediate future. So that is limiting our revenue growth. So these are the numbers. Again, I won't read them to you. These haven't changed since I shared them with you last year, sales tax and basic formula. These are as accurate as I can get them right now. Here's what they look like broken down into revenue by source. So you can see here just under a 3% change in local revenue. But remember, local revenue also includes sales to students for our lunch program. It also includes our preschool tuition and those types of fee-based services, our before and after childcare Discover Club. So this is not just state. So when you heard me say an increase of 1.4% on the revenue side due to assessed valuation, there's other things going on here on the revenue side other than just the local property taxes. So that's why you see a delta there. County revenue being a little more conservative on this side with a slight decline. I'm hoping that's not actually how that turns out. But again, we do this on the data that we have on hand. State revenue, slight increase. We will be claiming our preschool students in the coming year, as we intended to do for this year for the state foundation formula. And that number is reflective of that, along with the projected increase in student population. Federal revenue, this is based on the best numbers we have at the time. As also, Roxana, you heard her mention earlier, the ESSER II funding of roughly $550,000, the lion's share of which is allocated to the fiscal 22 budget to offset costs, staffing costs primarily, and purchase services costs related to MOCAP and other virtual options. And then non-current revenue, that's just anything that happens in the prior year that gets booked. Revenue from other LEAs, this is Riverview Normandy students, that's mostly declined at this point, mostly ceased at this point. However, we do receive tuition in the form of billbacks with our, Vince does a great job of monitoring for us when it comes to students from other districts attending. This is just a graphical representation of our projected revenues. Here is our positions preliminary. Of course, we've been communicating with you our staffing changes. This is just a quick look at that and what that will look like. So 3.5 FTEs. This would be 4 people though, not 3.5 people. We are expecting a 5% increase to salaries, and about a $325,000 of that will be offset by the ESSER II funds. And those increases related to, as one would expect, the salary schedule, the increase that we discussed with you related to the CBTF recommendation earlier in the meeting, as well as the support staff and administrator salary increases as also discussed, and the COVID related staffing. Benefits, Roxana, you did a good job of teeing all this up for me. Benefits will be increasing as a result of our claims experience over the past 3 years. That is a 3-year rolling average. So it takes a couple of years to wash out 1 or 2 bad years. We're hoping that that will start to happen again and will start to normalize a little bit and fall into a lower tier on the premium. 7.5% is hard to digest. It's hard to take that hit every year. And overall benefits are expected to increase about 11% right now is our projection, and also for our new board members, those benefits aren't just medical and dental, they're also the retirement that we're required to pay by statute for our teachers and support staff. Purchase services, again, slight decrease here. And that's mostly because this being an abnormal year, our budgets were adjusted adjusted for COVID related expenses. And we're also offsetting some of those by $100,000 due to those ESSER funds I mentioned earlier. Supplies is decreasing, but we've also made large increases to this year. So the supplies budget was unusually high due to COVID expenditures this year. So it's just a strange year, and to get a better look, it's more useful to go back 2 years and then apply a smaller percentage increase and visualize it that way. Looking at this year as a look back is kind of confusing. Capital outlay, most of this has been rolled into our bond projects. A lot of the larger type of infrastructure type things, so those aren't there. And then the technology expenditures are less in the coming year. That's a look at what our debt payments are projected to be, which is actually a pretty concrete number. We have a amortization schedule on all of our bonded indebtedness, so that's a good fixed number for us. One of the only certains that we have when it comes to budgeting. So overall, and another thing that skews the 2021 budget is the bond sale. So you'll see almost $64 million in revenue down there. I only wish that was the case. That's due to the bond sale and budgeting those expenses. But for next year, we're looking at about a $27.8 million budget inclusive of our debt service. This is another look at that. So right now we're projecting about a $312,000 deficit on the overall spend, and that would decrease our fund balance to 37.5, which is well within the target set by the board's budget directive. However, I'm hopeful that we'll get this number to look a little bit better. Of course, we want to stretch our funds as far as we possibly can. But this is what this would look like with static or flat revenue growth over the next couple of years, with increased expenses and other planned increases to the salaries, benefits, purchase service, supplies, and capital outlay budgets. So my next steps are to continue working on those expense budgets and giving you hopefully a bit of a more accurate look in May. And then of course, need to begin and continue and produce that budget document that I walk you all through in June. Okay, that is the conclusion of the presentation. Do you have any questions? All righty. Well, you know where to find me if you do. Just an email or a call away.
Thanks, Chris.
No problem.
Okay, moving on to board communications, starting with the calendar, which is on me. So just reminding everyone, tomorrow's the legislative meeting via Zoom, if anybody wants to join. And there's no school tomorrow, yay. Then 4/28 is the CBTF virtual meeting, I believe. Decision day for the seniors, I believe we were told today, is May 5th. Please save 5/6 for our next work session. And then go to the spring play between May 8th and May 9th. Employee recognition, May 13th. And we're all RSVPing to Ed right now, is that right? Okay. And then the senior fancy event on 5/14, our next board meeting is May 20th. Scholarship night, May 25th. Senior walk, May 28th. Those will be awesome. June 7th, senior barbecue. And the last day of school is June 10th. Are we missing anything on the calendar, guys? Okay. So the next item on board communications is board development by Katie Kaufman.
Just an update for folks. I know that we have talked about kind of our ongoing engagement with the MAP Center. We have hit another snag with scheduling with them. And so at this point, I think we're going to pause the data review, obviously with things coming down with end of year and transitions into the next school year. I think we will be able to utilize MAP Center for ongoing professional development for staff and teachers. And I hope that we can actually integrate MAP Center into the onboarding that Amber and Rachel receive as well, since the existing board has had some extensive training with MAP Center up to this point. I will say, we'll remind folks that as part of the search package that we contracted with HYA on last year, we do have a time set with them, or an opportunity to set time with them to plan our first 100 days work and set some measurable targets with our incoming superintendent. So in talking with Roxana and Brandy and Maria about possible dates, I think we are going to plan to block the June work session, which would be that first Thursday of June, I think it's the 3rd, for that strategic planning-ish thing with HYA that we have to confirm with them, but they've been much more accommodating of our schedule than some other folks. So just planting that seed for you all. I think it will be, I know our superintendent accountability measures have come a long way in the time that I've been on the board, but I think being able to really start with a fresh external eye from HYA with Dr. Jameson will be a real good support for all of us. That is the board development update that I was prepared to give.
Thank you, Katie. So next up is the Joe's Place report, which I'll be giving. Joe's Place has a lot going on, which is really, really exciting. One of their residents is graduating early, living independently in his own apartment through a program called provided by Youth in Need. Vince is in the process of preparing another student to move in. And Joe's Place anticipates that they'll have 4 boys back in the house for the fall 2021-2022 school year. Some of the alumni are experiencing some hardships because of COVID. Rachel Mapp has been maintaining contact with them and helping provide support. So please reach out to her to see how you can assist. Also, Joe's Place was hard hit because of a lack of ability to fundraise during COVID, and as a result has lost over $20,000 in funds. So they've started finally being able to do some fundraising. Their next fundraiser is coming up, and they'll have also they'll be a part of STL Day on May 6th. So please go to the website for STL Day to donate. They have a newsletter coming out. Their spring 2021 newsletter should be out at the end of April. Their fundraiser event is coming up on Saturday, May 22nd. It's called Chocolate, Cheese, and Wine Tasting. It's from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. There is limited space. It will obviously feature chocolate, cheese, and wine. Table to table, they'll be working with Cacao Chocolate and Chateau Maplewood. The owner of Cacao Chocolate, and I hope I'm not butchering that, will lead the event, Brian, and the details will be announced soon. Other important notes to know, Joe's Place website is in the process of being overhauled, more relevant content and updates for the community, as well as an upgraded donation system. So please be on the lookout for that. All right, the next item on our agenda is the board, looks like it's the board liaison report by Katie.
Yeah, again, MSBA, there's obviously a lot still going on in our legislative branch and at the state that affects public education. We've received some critical updates in the last week, but just continuing to keep an eye on that silliness going on in Jeff City.
Yes, please, a watchful eye. Next on the agenda is looks like the MSBA, scholarship report by Miss Knapper.
Hey y'all. So we are very, very fortunate to have an expert in fundraising on our board, Miss Amber Withacombe. Thank you so much. I have already talked to her, y'all. I was like, look, we need assistance. I was honest with her. I was like, I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying. The best that I've been able to do is just nag folks and keep reminding folks, please donate to the scholarship. You can do that online at the MRH website. However, Amber has great ideas, and I know she and Ed are set to meet tomorrow to talk about those ideas so we can raise some money for our students and our alumni. And because I don't know if the community knows that recipients of the Nelson Mitten Scholarship get this scholarship for 2 years, not one. And that actually came from a community member named Carla DeRoos. So community gives us input, and we try to make it happen for the benefit of our children. So I do know that we received a very nice donation, and I would like to give it over or hand it over to Ed so he can share that with y'all.
Well, okay. It's interesting. The latest benefactor, I guess, of the Nelson Mitten Board Scholarship Fund is a guy named Nelson Mitten. And should I talk him out? Is that okay?
I think so. Blame it on me.
Well, I won't blame anything on you. Yeah, we got a very generous donation today of $1,000, which will cover two scholarships for the freshman year for 2 recipients, or it might be the 2 sophomore year payments for last year's recipients. However we use it, however you slice it, it was extremely generous, and it was great to see him when he came up to the central office door today. We talked for quite a while. So Nelson, if you're out there in the audience, thank you so much. And he continues to give and give and give.
Thank you, Ed. So I'm excited to see what you and Amber come up with. And I just want to tell the board one last time, if you haven't donated, donate. I'm talking to myself too. So please don't forget. All right. That's it. That concludes my report.
Do you know, Nikki, what the balance is after Mr. Mitten's gift?
That's a good question. I do not know.
Give me just a minute.
I think we're about halfway to our fundraising goal based on.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Chris can send out the numbers later. We're about halfway there, so that helps. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the resignation of one of our board members.
So I have submitted my resignation, and I told myself this entire time, Nikki, you bet not cry. Don't let a tear come from your eye. And I'm holding them in. I was elected to be the next mayor of Maplewood. And so I will need to resign. My last day on the board will be April 16th, which is tomorrow. And I will miss you all a great deal. I will miss getting to see your faces and send you text messages about things and crack jokes with y'all. But you will still see me, just not in this capacity. But I'll pop up on you, especially when we get to meet in person again. I'll be there. I just won't get to say hi, y'all, at the beginning of the meeting. So I will see you. I plan to work on building a strong partnership with our school district. And so that's why I won't be far. I just won't be as close as I am right now. And I have one little tear coming out of my eye, but that's it. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki, for your service, for going through these difficult, unprecedented times with us. That's to all of you. I mean, there's nobody I'd rather be in the trenches with. So love you all. And congratulations and good luck.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations,
Nikki.
Once a member of this group, you're always a member of this group. So
Thank you. That's why I was trying to ask Ed. I'm like, can I go to the shindig? I want to be at the party.
Yeah, you're definitely going to the shindig. We honor all our people leaving. By the way, you can always pop up on public forum every month. So just pop in there.
And just put hey y'all on the agenda. Just hey y'all.
Hey y'all.
And we have Nikki Knapper back for public forum.
Oh, Oh, thank you guys so much.
And make sure you get a
Same.
cigar from Francis for your first council meeting.
There you go. Yeah.
I
Nikki,
will
we have the
reserve a cup
same.
of tea for you. How about that?
I can bring them. I can bring the cigars. I'm good.
So Nikki, our saying is once a blue devil, always a blue devil. So you're just going to be across the field. I mean, come on.
Nice.
Yeah, just across the field.
Just across the field. Congratulations. We're proud of you.
Thank y'all. Go Blue Devils.
That's right.
Yay. All right, guys, we are in the action item section of the agenda, and I believe we have some amendments. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion if that's okay. I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to include the CBTF recommendations and the support staff recommendations that have been presented.
What? Do
So
I have a second? Okay.
we need a second on the amendment, right?
Second on the amendments.
Right.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Let's make CBTF 7.02B and let's make the support 7.02C.
So do you want to go to E-rate then for 7.01?
Yes, we can do E-rate and then go to the others.
Okay, Maria, you good?
Or do we
Hold
need to
on
make
one second.
Or should
I
we
want to
do?
make sure we got Kat lined up right on this one too. So can we
Can we do
start with the CBTF, the two amendments? Can we start with those and then let the others fall in line?
Cascade.
And we'll just amend the
We can.
numbers.
Oh, go ahead. Yep. What numbers do we need to make them? 7 point.
We'll just move everybody down. How about that?
7.01 will be CBTF, 7.02 will be the support staff.
Okay.
And then
Sounds
everything
good.
will fall in line afterwards. Kat, you good to go? You can just,
I got it. Thank you.
great, thank you.
Okay. So can I get a motion on the new 7.01, which is CBTF?
Move to approve the CBTF recommendations as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Can I get a motion on the next one?
Move to approve the support staff recommendation, salary recommendations as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Katie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Moving on to E-rate. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve E-rate as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Katie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion on the fiscal year 22 assessment plan?
Move to approve the FY22 assessment plan as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Nikki. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion on board member resignation?
Can you
It's going to happen. Move to approve the board member resignation as presented.
reluctantly seconded?
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Francis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, can I get a motion to go into executive session?
Last time, Knapper.
I move to enter executive session in accordance with section 610.021, subsections 3, 9, and 13, and section 610.022 of the revised statutes of Missouri on April 15th, 2021 for the following specific reasons: personnel matters.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mikailan. Thank you, Amber. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Before we leave, Chris, the link is saying no access, so I just want to make sure we have a link to go to.
I just keep hitting refresh on that page. Once I end this meeting, I'll make sure that there's a good link down there for y'all.
Thank you.
Okay.
And
So
for our newbies, just in case, just make sure you got your email up just in case.
You have to be
Yeah,
logged
that-
into board
that
app.
too.
Yep, click on 801 and hopefully refresh and it'll be there. If not, check your email.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right.
See you in a minute.
Hey,
Thank you.
Brandy, great job on running your first meeting there.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Smooth, no, really good.
I had set the bar low, so we've made it.
Girl.
See you guys shortly.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.